Night staked out over the Chattahoochee. The bridge smelled like wet metal and river mud. Flashing blue tucked behind the railings, radios low, officers watched the black water slide under James Jackson Parkway. They had chased rumors for months, vans, strangers, whispers, and now they were catching the river itself, waiting to hear what no one wanted to believe. A splash broke the night. Tires hissed. A car crossed the span. They waved it down in the humid dark. 2 years earlier, the worry started as quiet talk passed across porches in southwest Atlanta. In July 1979, boys didn't come home on time. It was summer. Parents scanned the streetlights, called friends, called cousins. Then the city found bodies, near creek beds, in tall grass, behind dumpsters. Edward Smith and Alfred Evans were discovered only days apart. Newspapers called the victims children, but the list would come to include teenagers and young adults, mostly black, drawn from working-class neighborhoods that felt forgotten even before the cameras arrived. Atlanta tried to organize its fear. Police formed a task force. Parents created patrols and phone trees, church basements filled with maps and pushpins. A reward grew with donations and political promises. Anxious, the city kept moving. MARTA cars grinding, the Falcons losing, federal officials promising help, but the names kept lengthening. 12-year-old Yusuf Bell vanished after running an errand for an elderly neighbor. Weeks later, he was found in an abandoned school. Lab technicians began to see familiar things on taped lifts from clothing, the same types of carpet and bedding fibers repeating across victims. By late 1980, the murders were the low drum under every newscast. Curfews and school assemblies tried to give order to fear that had no shape. Helicopters thumped overhead after dark. Volunteers stapled flyers to poles until the staples outnumbered the wood. A 24-hour hotline collected tips, confessions, and hoaxes. The toll mounted. At least 28 victims, depending on which list you read, the youngest in grade school, the oldest in their late 20s. The FBI joined the task force and built a profile of a local offender who could move easily in the neighborhoods and gain trust. Investigators noticed how often the searches ended at water. Several bodies turned up in or near the Chattahoochee and its tributaries. In the spring of 1981, officers settled into night watches on the bridges, betting that the river would speak first. On May 22nd, around 2:50 a.m., they heard the sound they had trained themselves to hear, a splash in the dark. Moments later, headlights crossed the span. They stopped the car. The driver said his name was Wayne Williams, an aspiring music promoter. He told them he was on his way to audition a singer. In the station wagon were rope and odds and ends, and there were fibers. Everywhere, as fibers always are, waiting to be compared. What followed was science under fluorescent lights. The carpet in Williams' home and car shed a distinctive tri-lobed green nylon fiber that had been manufactured in limited batches. Fibers from blankets and bedspreads added other colors and shapes. Dog hair, consistent with a German shepherd that lived in the Williams home, showed up on some victims' clothing. No single strand could name a killer, the defense would argue, but prosecutors said the combination pointed like a map to one address. Witnesses spoke about Williams's late-night drives and temper. 2 days after the bridge stop, the river gave up Nathaniel Cater. The focus narrowed. In January 1982, the state of Georgia tried Williams for 2 murders, Jimmy Ray Payne and Nathaniel Cater, both young men, both linked by fibers and circumstance. The courtroom filled with parents who had lost children, with reporters, with a city's frustration and hope. Jurors watched experts build charts showing the same fibers appearing across victims, narrowing through brand, dye lot, and manufacturer. They heard about the stakeout, the splash, the stop on the bridge. The defense questioned the reliability of microscopic comparison and the chain of custody. The state asked the jury to consider the weight of patterns. The jury deliberated for less than 2 days. On February 27, 1982, Wayne Williams was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. After the verdict, authorities announced that, based on evidence patterns and investigative links, they would close 22 other cases and attribute them to the same offender. On paper, Atlanta exhaled. In living rooms across the city, it wasn't that simple. Some families believed justice had arrived. Others felt the paperwork had moved faster than the facts, and that closing files did not answer the questions those files contained. Doubt, once seeded, took root. Not every victim fit the same age range. Some had different causes of death. Rumors of Ku Klux Klan involvement, ignored leads, and alternate suspects threaded through conversations and late-night radio. Years later, as DNA science advanced, some evidence was re-examined. A dog hair remained consistent with the Williams home, but mitochondrial DNA could not single out one animal. Supporters of the verdict said the totality still held. Critics said the net was woven from pressure as much as proof. The families kept the calendar. Birthdays came and went with empty chairs. Memorials gathered candles and weathered photographs. City leaders promised the cases were not forgotten, even as time made promises harder to keep. In 2019, Atlanta's mayor and police chief ordered a new review, sending preserved evidence for modern testing and pledging a clearer accounting of which cases could be linked and which could not. The work moved slowly, limited by what decades-old samples could still give up, but it moved because the families kept asking. What keeps the Atlanta child murders lodged in the American mind is not a single unanswered question, but a cluster of them. If Wayne Williams killed Payne and Cater, does that prove he killed the others? Could one man have stalked such a wide span of ages and places without leaving a clearer trail? If more than one predator moved through the city in those years, did the rush to stop the panic keep Atlanta from seeing that? The case is a knot of fear and probability, careful lab work and community rumor, and it sits where many true stories sit, in the space between what can be proved and what people know. From the start, the timeline reads cleanly and still refuses to deliver you neatly to a destination. 1979, boys go missing. 1980, the list grows. Fibers point to a small world of carpets and blankets. 1981, a splash at night, an arrest, a city holding its breath. 1982, a verdict, life sentences, files closed, at least on paper. After that comes the long tail, appeals, documentaries, retests, and the stubborn return of questions at kitchen tables. Atlanta built itself into an international brand, a skyline of glass and promise, but families carried something the skyline could not. What's left, when you step back from the charts and timelines, are the names, at least 28 of them, and the truth that someone took them. The task force binders, the fiber boards, the footage of the bridge at night can only carry us so far. Most of what endures lives in living rooms and keepsakes, school portraits in plastic frames, a jacket folded in tissue, a piece of lined paper with homework half finished. If science one day erases doubt, it will not erase the spaces those children and young men once filled. And if the doubt never leaves, the memory must do the work that certainty could not, keeping watch over a city that once held its breath by a dark river. Thank you for listening to The Lantern's Tale. Subscribe for more true stories, if you dare.